Hey guys, it's Lawrence from Modern Cosplay, and today we're going to do Deku's sleeve from My Hero Academia. So this pattern is pretty straightforward, so I'll have them down below where you guys can check them out and you guys can build along. I like to think my price for the patterns are pretty reasonable, so I'll have this one for free because it's pretty simple and straightforward, and I know a lot of you guys have been asking for this tutorial, so here it is. For this tutorial, I'm going to use a 4-way stretch fabric. Here I'm using Yaya Han's Ultra Premium white fabric. I like the texture on it, but you can use whatever you find best fits your costume. Next, we're going to use 2 thickness of EVA foam. First one being a 2mm adhesive foam, and then the 8mm, which will then be for the entire cuffs, which gives it volume around the bicep. Okay, so the pattern is down below for you to follow along, but in case you want to make your own sleeve pattern, which will be useful for a lot of cosplays, this is how you would do it. So here, I just took a measuring tape, which you guys can get at your local fabric store. Basically, you measure around the bicep, the largest part. Get that number recorded. Next, go to your wrist and do the same thing. Get the measurement around your wrist, record that. And then the final measurement is the length of the sleeve. So here we're gonna go from basically where we got the first measurement of the bicep all the way down to the wrist. So get that measurement down too. So you have 3 measurements here. So once we have those 3 measurements, we're gonna make this shape. So the fatter part is going to be half of the biceps measurement, and the thinner part is gonna be half of the wrist measurement. And of course, the length of this trapezoid is going to be the length of the sleeve. So with that pattern, you just need to cut 2 pieces of fabric out of that and basically put them together and stitch along the 2 seam lines. However, the problem with that is you have 2 seam lines. So if you want to minimize the seam lines, which is what we want for Deku's sleeve, what you can do instead is take that pattern and flip it along one of the edges, the long edges, and create a bigger pattern like this. That way, when we take that full pattern and fold it, we only have 1 seam line. So now that we have the bigger sleeve pattern, I'm gonna show you guys how to use that. So take whatever fabric you're using. For me, I'm using the Yaya Han's Ultra Premium white fabric. So it's 2 sides, 2 different textures. I like the shiny side on the outside, so I'm gonna make sure to take my pattern and put it on the non-shiny side. And we're gonna use a washable fabric pen, which I will have linked down below for you guys to pick up too. Carefully choose out the pattern like so. And with that, we have a pattern that looks like this. I'm gonna use these marginal rulers I have. I'm just gonna use a 1/2 inch margin on each of the seam edges and chase them out carefully like so. And then we're gonna use a dedicated pair of fabric scissors and cut out the pattern like so. So once we have that, we're ready to go to the sewing machine. So before we sew the seam edges together, we're gonna use these binding clips, which I love because I used to use needles back in the day when my mom taught me. But ever since I introduced these binding clips, they are amazing, definitely worth the investment. Basically clip the edges together along the seam and then put it in the machine and stitch it. So from what I heard, the zigzag stitch is good for stretch fabric, so I'm using zigzag, although the other sleeve was a straight stitch and it turned out okay, in my opinion. So I'm not the person to be asking, but ask your friends or drop them down below, and if you guys know, you guys can answer that question. And then once it's done, we're gonna take that extra seam edge and trim it off just because we gave it 1/2 inch and we don't want that bulk fabric when we put the sleeve on. So with that, we're basically done with the sleeve, and that's what it looks like on my arm. It's a little loose on the top, which is perfectly fine because we're gonna use that extra foam piece. That's gonna be the cuff on the top. Now the original cuff I made was a separate piece and I just slid it on like so. So the sleeve and the cuffs are separate. However, from the manga, it looks like they're flushed because I'm building again. I just want to try something new. So here, for this tutorial, I'm gonna make it one seamless sleeve. Now, to make that extra cuff, I'm gonna use 8mm, but you can use whatever foam you have available to you. And we're gonna determine the height of the cuff. For me, it's gonna be 3 inches. So that's what I'm doing right here. And it's basically a straight strip. Now, to determine the length around your arm for the cuffs, depending on what you're using, you can use my diagram I have right here. So I've already calculated it. This is a cheat sheet you can follow. So you can see if you're using different thickness of foam, you're gonna use a different addition to the length. So here I'm just making the cuff, measuring it out, 14.7 inches, what we said. So if you've seen the Deku Air Force video, you guys know what I'm talking about right here. So this is a seam edge that's going to be 45-degree beveled, and so when you put contacts on both of them, they're less likely to undo itself versus a 90-degree seam edge where you make a cylinder. And the reason why is because usually when you wear a costume, it's hot, you get sweaty, and sweat goes in there and undoes it. Okay, and you guys know the deal, it's the good old contact cement. So that's the best adhesive for EVA foam, and it's been recommended to me by a lot of professionals. So I've stuck with it, it's never given me any issues. Some of you guys have been asking if you guys can use some other type of adhesive, and the answer is yes. However, I wouldn't recommend it just because I haven't played with it. Contact cement is flexible, so that's good for something you're gonna wear. Oh, and you can also speed up the drying process using a blow dryer, not a heat gun, because the heat gun will undo the glue. Okay, and here's the cuff around my arm. So that's basically most of the sleeve already. The thing about Deku's sleeve is he has this little detail you see right here. So you can do it the old school way, you can just cut out this piece and shave it down. But I personally don't like that, so here's a more systematic way using the pattern. So here we're just gonna take that pattern and trace it over to our foam. Here I'm using 8mm. So here you also see 2 darts right here. So that's going to be the edge line in which we make the valley cut. And I'll show you guys what I mean by valley cut. So with a straight edge, we're gonna make a connected line. And then with the bevel cutter, we're gonna make sure to test so that it doesn't cut all the way through the foam. And we're gonna cut on both sides of that edge to create a valley like so. So this is gonna help the foam bend seamlessly. So that is how you make a valley cut. So once we've done that, we're just gonna cut out the rest of the pattern like so. Next, we're gonna take the side piece, which is looking like this, and we're gonna cut that out on 8mm as well. Once we have both the side pieces cut out, it's gonna look something like this. You guys know the deal. It's gonna be contact cement on both surfaces, and then let it dry and put them together. And once we carefully put the 2 edges together, we should have something that looks like this. So now we're ready to do the next part, which is the trims. So these are gonna be 2mm trims. So that's the 2mm adhesive I was talking about earlier in the video. We're just gonna trace those out like so. So if your cuffs are a little bigger, I suggest making the trim just a tad bit bigger than what you actually calculated. And we can always come back and trim off extra. Once we have that pattern traced onto the foam, we can just cut out like so. And here I didn't cut out the trim exactly because I'm gonna keep it on the foam sheet, take it outside, seal it up with some Plasti-Dip, and then paint it blue. So once we've done that and it's drying outside, we're gonna come back inside and we're gonna take this pattern. So this pattern is unique because it's gonna be the pattern for the wrapping of that little detail that we made earlier. So we're just gonna take that and carefully trace it onto the same 4-way stretch fabric that you used to make the entire sleeve. So originally I used the Sharpie, which was a little intense for me. So I went ahead and retraced the pattern using the fabric pen, which I recommend. Once you're done doing that, you should have something that looks like this. And to cut that out, I'm using a pair of sharp utility knife. You can use scissors. So I actually use a combination of both here. So here's that fabric piece completely cut out. So to put these 2 pieces together, I'm gonna try something different for this tutorial. So here I'm using some spray adhesive Gorilla Glue. Now that's just gonna go on the fabric piece, and for the foam piece, I'm gonna use the good old contact cement, and we'll see if it works. So just for reassurance, I'm putting an extra coat of Gorilla Glue spray adhesive. So I gave it about 2 or 3 minutes drying time before I put the 2 pieces together. Okay, and here are the 2 pieces, moment of truth. I just picked a corner or an edge and started wrapping it like so. And so far it looks like it's working since it's not coming off. So just carefully take your time here. It's kind of like putting a screen protector onto your phone. You're gonna get some air bubbles. Just patiently and carefully roll them out like so. And the more patient you are, the better the results. So here's that wedge, that valley, basically where the apex, I guess, that lines up right where the edge of the cuff goes. So that's what I'm showing you guys right here. So you might have some extra fabric like I did right here. Just come back with some scissors and trim off the excess. So with that, we fully wrapped up the wedge. The only thing left to do now is to put that cuff into the sleeve. So to make this look extra nice, you wanna make sure the seam that we created on the foam lines up with the seam of the sleeve. So that's what I'm doing right here. So once you manage to put the cuff into the sleeve, you should have something that looks like this. Here, I'm just applying contact cement to the extra fabric piece that's hanging out, like so, and to the outer trim of the cuffs, like so. So give it about 2-3 minutes to dry, and once it's dry and tacky to a touch, you're ready to basically wrap the fabric around the cuff. So once we're done with that, we're gonna have this cuff looking like this, and we just need to put that wedge right on. So that wedge is gonna be opposite the seam, because the seam is gonna be running down on the armpit side, because we wanna minimize the look of the seams. So carefully line that up opposite, and coming back with the washable fabric pen, we're gonna mark the corners of the wedge like so. And you guys know the deal, we're gonna use good old contact cement to put the wedge onto the cuff. So I'm just applying super glue along the edge like so. And once we have the contact cement and the super glue along the edge, we're gonna put the wedge on. Here's the cuff with the wedge on, and it looks decent, but in my opinion, I think the cuff could be a little bit more tapered. So I went outside and grabbed the trim. I already painted in blue, that's why they look at this. So here, we wanna grab the top trim and line it along the wedge like so. So even though these are adhesive foam, I wanna make sure the trim detail won't be coming off later. So in order to do that, we're gonna be using super glue, at least along the edge of this trench detail. So once we've done that, then we can start wrapping the adhesive foam around the cuff like so. And we're gonna use super glue just where the two trim edges meet. Just like that, we have the first trim on. And basically we're gonna repeat the same thing on the second trim. Okay, and just like that, we've made Deku's sleeve, and that's just how it looks like on my arm. In my opinion, the wedge is a little short, so I'll have different versions for the pattern for you guys to play around with. This is cool because you can actually roll it down and it becomes basically like Deku's first gloves, as in I think season 1 and 2. So with this one pattern, you can basically make different versions of Deku. For example, in the latest part of the manga, you see him back in his original gloves. So that's what I'm gonna be doing for my latest cosplay of Deku. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for checking out this video. If you guys have any questions, let me know down below. If you guys are new here, feel free to hit that like button or subscribe right there. Or check out these other tutorials I've made right here. And with that being said, much love, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.